Good. Well, we'll get the ball rolling here. So I think first thing up, Mitch, is the station manager's report.
Yes, and thank you very much. I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who made time for us this morning. It's delightful to see everyone. And I wanted to bring you up to date on a couple of items. The first and probably the most significant of which is our strategic planning process, which had been underway for some time when we last met. I think since our last meeting, we've conducted not just the SWOT analysis among the members of the Strategic Planning Committee, but also SWOT analyses among the members of the NCPR staff. And as I pointed out to just about everyone that I've talked with about this, the thing that was probably most amazing is how similar in tone and nature the analysis was from group to group. We did two separate groups of staff members and the group of strategic plan committee members. And there were some really consistent themes that came up, and that's resulted in dividing the plan up into what we're calling 8 pillars of the strategic plan. And I'm going to attempt to share my screen here and bring up the 8 pillars. Can everybody see that?
Yep.
The pillars, so what we're doing now is we've divided the staff members up into working groups, each of which is putting together an action plan on their particular pillar of the strategic plan. Obviously, we only have a staff of 17 or 18 people, and so there are multiple people that are on multiple groups. But the way it divides up is, it says the document is not open. Is that right?
That's right.
Oh,
What we have
Right.
is something called Executive Council.
oh, hold on. Let me stop that share and try this one. How's that?
There you go, Mitch.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I didn't want to spoil the surprise anyway. So here are the 8 pillars. The first is the master content thesis, which is the big overarching explanation for everything the strategic plan is about. What is NCPR as an organization about? What does it need to grow? And essentially, why are we doing this process now? Then there's marketing and competitive response, which is a huge issue that was identified by just about everybody in the SWOT analysis. How do we reach an audience that we're not reaching already? We do a great job of preaching to the converted, if you will, but what do we need to do in order to increase our brand recognition? What do we need to do to find the people who would benefit from us and for whom we would benefit from having them as part of our audience? And how do we keep them and cultivate them, not just as listeners or users of our digital product, but also make them individual donors and potentially just important members of the NCPR community? Pillar number 3 is fairly obvious or self-explanatory anyway, fundraising and major donor strategy. What do we need to do to increase our ability to raise money from individual donors, be they people who give us $60 a year at the $5 a month level, or people who give us $1,000 or $5,000 or more? Pillar number 4 is digital expansion. This is something that should be obvious. Our digital product has become every bit as important as what people listen to on the radio. And so the big question is, what does the ncpr.org and all of our other digital products, what do they look like in the future, and how do we support them? Pillar 5 is the infrastructure technology modernization pillar. How do we ensure that our 34 broadcast signals and our studio facilities stay healthy? Bob Sauter is on this meeting, and he's going to mention at least our change of frequency, which speaks to basically the issues, the nonstop issue that is keeping a network of so many different so many different frequencies around the region, keeping them all on the air, and at the same time, making sure that the studios that feed those signals continue to work and continue to meet modern standards. Pillar number 6, our relationship with St. Lawrence University. How do we ensure the relationship that benefits both Ncpr and our institutional licensee, especially as we move into a new era of leadership at St. Lawrence? And Paul Redfern's going to talk a little bit about the new president who was selected recently a little later in this meeting. Pillar number 7, our overall financial stability, ensuring that we're on a sustainable path across departments. So not just talking about financial stability when it comes to fundraising or underwriting, but everything that we do so that we align the sustainable mission of each of the elements of what we do as an organization. And finally, pillar 8 is diversity, equity, and inclusion. A lot of organizations and companies are talking about this right now, especially when it comes to hiring and retainment practices. We're not a huge organization, so we are working to be as diverse as we possibly can and inclusive. But we also want to make sure that when we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, we're talking about our forward-facing, our outward-facing activities. How do we make sure that that we both lead the way in terms of covering diversity in our programming and areas like news coverage, but also making sure that we fully understand what diversity, equity, and inclusion are about in the North Country, and so ensuring that what we do reflects the reality of those really important goals. So those are the pillars of the strategic plan. We've divided into work groups. The work groups are in the process of meeting to put together an action plan. Each group should be coming back with 3 to 4 action plans and the steps that are required to get us where we're going in the next 3 to 5 years. That will continue to come together in the next few weeks. We're hoping to be able to share drafts of these action plans with the strategic planning committee within the next month or so, and then hopefully we'll have something bigger to share with the full executive council at our next meeting in May. I don't know if people have questions. You want me to leave? I'll leave the pillars up for right now, but does anybody have questions about strategic planning at this point? Hearing none, feel free to email me and I can send out these pillars as an attachment. I should have included those as a handout, but I'm happy to send this list out to all the EC members later today. I also just want to bring people up to date briefly on a couple of.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely. Yep.
It's Margot Ernst. How far out are you looking with this strategic plan? In other words, is this like a 3-year plan, a 5-year plan? And then I'm specifically zooming in on studio facilities. I mean, how far out is the plan, for example, of expanding your facilities and building a new facility perhaps? So, I mean, I'm just wondering how far out you're looking.
We're looking 5 years out. We want to have some goals that we can accomplish within 3, but I think the aim is to have our eyes on what Ncpr will look like in 2025 and 2026. As far as studio facilities go, I'm pleased to say that we've received a grant, actually a couple of grants recently that will allow us to buy new equipment that will first of all ensure that our studios and our current facility continue to function and meet modern specifications in the short run. And this equipment, if and when we're able to undertake another facility project, either moving into a new space or further expanding our current space, this is all equipment that will come along for the ride, if you will. But it's really important to us to, especially with Radio Bob planning to retire in the coming months, to not have a situation where a new engineer comes on board and is immediately confronted with an imminent failure of our broadcast control equipment. So we have in grant money about $65,000 that will allow us to buy new control boards, not just for the main on-air studio, but the aim is to buy them for our other studios as well, so they can be networked together, and that'll also help us out. As the should the pandemic continue for longer, it will give us flexibility to be able to broadcast more easily from other studios. There are a lot of things that improving our facilities in our current space. There are a lot of reasons that that's important. Not the least of which is we don't want to be in a situation where if we do have a new space, we have to buy entirely new equipment as well.
Margot, to add one more thing onto there too. This is Paul. The space and facility issue, as you know, came up in the station manager search a couple years ago. It was on every group that contributed to the SWOT analysis identified this, and that's why it's one of these pillars, because it needs to be part of the 5-year plan here of what's going to happen with the space and how do we deal with the space. So
Thank you.
No, thanks for the question. Other questions?
Mitch?
Yeah.
Mitch.
Hi,
Hi,
Jeff.
this is Jeff. Hi. You've done a really good job on this. And as you said at the outset, these pillars, totally correlate with the SWOT input, which is always good to see. And it was literally consensus level, which was also good to see. So I'm congratulations on progress to date, and really looking forward to helping where I can on action plans and everything you're doing. So good job.
And Jeff, thank you so much for your leadership on this as well. You have been a huge reason that this has gotten to this point so far. And as I hope I've said enough, we're really delighted to have you on our side and on our team.
Great. Thank you.
Oh, you bet. So briefly, unless there are other questions about the strategic plan, I just wanted to bring people briefly up to date on a couple of successful job searches and one that's in progress. We have recently hired 2 new reporter producers for the NCPR news team. They're both terrific and amazing people, one of whom has started just in the last couple of days. Her name is Celia Clark, and she comes to us from WSKG in Binghamton, although she was the Ithaca bureau chief there. This is the same station that brought us Monica Sandreski, who does such an amazing job on the 8 o'clock hour with Todd and is a delightful reporter and a delightful person. So Celia joins us this week. And then next month, we're really excited to have Ryan Finnerty join us. Ryan is going to be our Plattsburgh bureau chief. He comes to us from Hawaii Public Radio, of all places, where he was the state government reporter. But he is originally from Saratoga Springs. His family is from Sackett's Harbor, and he still has family in the North Country, so he's thrilled to be essentially coming home. He's a graduate of the University of Vermont, so he knows the Champlain Valley. He starts the middle of March. He may be the only person ever to move from Honolulu to Plattsburgh, New York in the middle of March. Both of our new reporters are actually starting remotely. Celia is actually in Ithaca for the remainder of this week just because she's had some problems getting internet connectivity in her new place in Canton. Ryan is easing into the North Country by working out of Saratoga Springs for a few weeks when he gets back to the North Country. So they're really two amazing reporters, and we're extremely fortunate to have both of them. I hope they will pay huge dividends to us, both as colleagues, to the rest of the staff, and also to our audience. Our search for a chief engineer who no one will ever replace Radio Bob Sauter, but someone will be a chief engineer in the future is ongoing. We have a number of pretty competitive candidates. We're hoping to gain a more critical mass of candidates before we take the search to the next level. If anybody knows broadcast engineers anywhere in the country who might be looking for work in a really terrific environment and also facing the challenges of keeping 34 signals on the air, please do have them contact me or Radio Bob, or find the job listing. I can share it with the whole group, but the listing is also on our website and the St. Lawrence Employment website. So those are the new staff hires and the one that's ongoing. I hope at the next meeting we can bring you up to date on some future hiring plans, because we do have some vacancies that we're looking forward to starting to fill in the weeks and months to come. And with that, I guess I'll turn things back over to Bob, who will take Bob Keller, who will take us on to the next point in the meeting.
Well, I think the next point is Radio Bob. He's there somewhere, I think. There he is. Hey, so let her rip.
Okay, thanks, Bob. You've got a great name, and thank you very much thanks to everybody for being here today and being remote and everything. First of all, I want to apologize. I'm on the radio, as you know, and as Radio Bob, I use a different part of my brain, which is pretty good. The part of my brain I'm using now, which is talking to people and making presentations, is not so good. So I'm supposed to be discussing the financial situation for North Country Public Radio, and I think Mitch sent you all a spreadsheet. Well, first of all, he sent you our latest audited financial statement from FY 2020. And I also made a spreadsheet, which I think makes things easier to understand, mainly because the actual financial statement includes a lot of numbers like in-kind support and things that really are great and very valuable and important, but don't really reflect what most people can understand of balancing a checkbook. So that's what my little spreadsheet is about. Anyway, basically, FY 2020 and FY 2021 look to be pretty good years for North Country Public Radio despite the pandemic. It's crazy, but true. Most of this is because our salary costs have been much reduced, because we have several open positions that have extended for a lot of the time period. For example, David Summerstein had to fill in as program director from the beginning of 2019 until Bonnie was hired in March of 2020. So that was a considerable savings. And Dale Hobson retired, and his position hasn't been filled. So these things have caused a reduction in salaries. Our funding for membership and underwriting has been fairly consistent since 2019. It's actually improved a little bit in 2020. I don't have 2019 here, but you'll have to trust me, or you could look at the last presentation I made back in August. Anyway, also in 2020, we received what was called a relief payment from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting of $112,000, which helps. It certainly was a lot of relief. Anyway, so that's basically the cash situation for the station has shown that with some future fund, go up to the top, whoever's doing this. There you go to the top. This won't take long. So our revenues have been pretty good. You'll also see the CPB grant for FY 2021 is much higher than the year before. That was because the funding, the way this grant amount is calculated is based on the 2 years before how much revenue you recognized. And because we had the future fund that year, revenue is recognized even though it wasn't received. Pledges, in other words, were recognized. So all that revenue is counted into the formula that the CPP used to calculate that amount of money. Anyway, that's the income. The revenues look very good, and go down to the expenses. We'll get this over with soon because I'm starting to fall asleep. So these salaries and benefits are down from the previous year. And because of that, in FY 2020, we had to use $79,000 from the future fund in order to make revenues and expenses balance. And we project that it'll actually be the opposite in FY 2021, where we'll actually have had a little more revenue than we've had expenses. So that's all great. In the future,
Bob?
Yes, sir.
Bob, can I just make a couple of comments on the expense side? I think the other contributing factor has been that the university put into play a salary freeze during the past year as well, which has certainly helped the university keep the expenses at a lower rate of increase, as well as Ncpr.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that's been the reason why these positions have been unfilled. I just didn't want to throw you under the bus, Paul, because
No, that's okay. It's a public,
That's
it's a public thing.
that was the reason. Okay, now, however, you say, well, they have $1 million in cash. That's great, but in the future, it's not quite as easy as that, because we'll be back to full employment. We hope in the coming FY 2022, and NPR programs are going to increase by, is it 20%, 30% or something? So, and plus, St. Lawrence University has is working on eliminating direct cash support for the station, and I believe that in 2022 that support will go down by 25%. So we may have $1 million now, but in 5 years we won't have $1 million. That's for sure. So that's part of the strategic planning that we're working on in the coming weeks, to try to figure out exactly how to best use this surplus we have now and continue to be a viable organization for the next 5 years. If you have any questions about this, then I have another minute about PPP loans, if you want to, if we can mention that. Questions?
Yeah. Oh,
Bob, I have a question. It's Mike Erickson here from Brant Lake. Assuming that we were fully staffed, what would that do to the projected expenses for salaries?
Okay, well, for salaries, for example, for 2022, the salaries will go from 1.4 million to 1.53 million. So that's assuming that we hire a replacement for Dale on the 1st of July, as well as a replacement for me on the 1st of July. So yeah.
Does that also assume an increase in salaries next year?
That does not include an increase in salaries as of January 1st, 2021. I wasn't sure. Typically, the university does about a 2% across the board.
There's been no decision yet in terms of that for
2022.
2022.
Right. I wanted to be
that would be a
conservative.
variable. So, Mike, that would be a variable too in this.
Right. Thank
of
you.
the any increase in 2022.
And I think that this is something that I think Mitch was going to talk about, is that maybe a group of us or a subgroup of us might want to look into this future, how it works for the next 5 years when the figures are more solid. And that brings me to the next thing, is that we're actually applying for a PPP loan. The second round of federal stimulus payments approved back in December included new provisions that permit public broadcasters like us to apply for Paycheck Protection Programs loans. And that's because the first round, you had to include the entire organization. So we'd have to include all of the employees at St. Lawrence University. And because there's more than 500 of them, we couldn't have applied back in last February. But the new one, the new rules state that any public broadcasting station affiliated with a university or college can apply for one of these PPP loans. And St. Lawrence University is helping us do it, I believe, this very minute. The controller is working on filling in the application. And I'm almost done. The rules state that we can ask for 10 weeks of payroll and benefits. So that will be something like $250,000, which would help us not only this year, but in future years to make things meet. And here's the funny thing, you'll like this. The rules state that we could apply for either 10 weeks of payroll and benefits or $10 million, whichever is less. So anyway, it would have been nice to get the 10 million, but we're going to go for the 250,000 instead.
Even with a 2% increase, that doesn't get us to the 10 million.
That's right. Yes, go ahead.
Bob, I had a question of Paul. I'm sure you mentioned it, but why is what's the thinking behind the direct support being decreased and eliminated from St. Lawrence University?
It's a conversation that we've had over the last couple of years, especially as the university has looked at its own financial situation, Margot, and wanting to balance support for the station in all the various ways that we do that, along with the financial situation at the university, which is stretched as well. And there was an interest in making sure from a cash standpoint that Ncpr can stand up on its own 2 feet, so to speak, while also maintaining our commitment to it. There's a commitment in terms of the significant in-kind support that the university provides, as well as at the current in the current facility that's there, and part of that, as well as things like the what Bob just mentioned, the controller working on the PPP loan. The idea is certainly not to leave Ncpr hanging. It is a proud partner of the university. And we work with Mitch and with Bob on how to do this in a way that's that allows for Ncpr to continue to thrive into the future.
I'll jump in briefly and
Mitch,
say,
if I missed anything, Mitch, feel free to add in there.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that we're certainly very grateful to the university for the various supports that they provide us besides the cash payments. We don't have to pay rent on our facility, which is a huge advantage for us. Having worked at a variety of public radio stations in the past, where figuring out how to afford the real estate that they occupy is a huge part of the equation. And yeah, they provide support like work from the university controller. We get HR support, benefits management, and so forth. Obviously, we're also grateful for the direct financial payments as well, but we understand the situation that the university is in, certainly in this really kind of difficult time that we're all facing. And I think at the end of the day, just understanding what our certainties are as far as what we should expect from all of our various funding sources is important for us. So that's, I guess, what I can add to that question.
And I would just like to,
Thank you.
wait a minute.
That was not an editorial comment, right?
Yeah, that's right.
I was going to say that, Mitch. Okay.
Okay, the cuckoo clock is done. I just wanted to mention that my guess is that the University Relations / Facilities Committee would be involved with Paul and Mitch and some of that discussion as to what the future holds there and how that relationship would evolve. Does that sound right to you, Paul? And Mitch?
Yeah, that sounds appropriate, Bob. I don't think that committee has had a chance to meet yet.
Right.
Nor did we have anything like that prior to sort of facilitate the conversation. But I think that would be appropriate in the future.
Good. Yeah, I was just looking to the future on that, and if that committee was involved in that and those discussions, they could be the eyes and ears of the executive council as a whole to sort of distill that information for us and to get the what we need. So good. Did you have any other question there, Margot? Is that good?
No, thank you.
Okay. I guess we were interrupting Bob there, so.
I really wasn't saying much. I was going to say that the PPP loan, we've looked into it quite a bit, and it's really, as you know, it's not a loan, it's a gift. And it's really quite an amazing thing, and we hope we get it.
Yeah, good. Before you go on to your the engineering update, I just wanted to ask one question here on the financials, and maybe I should know the answer to this. The future fund, do we have someplace a nice succinct summary of what its purpose is? What are the guidelines governing money that goes in and out of it? Is there that document somewhere along with sort of an accounting that is accessible?
I'd say that there was, when the future fund was originally created, first of all, it's not a real fund, it's just an account. A real fund, I would think, would be something where you would invest it and just be able to access the interest. This was just designed back in 2019 to, as you know, help the station transition from the old leadership to the new leadership, and with the possibility that, you know, things might not go as well as they were, I guess basically is what was going on. And it was just designed to be a place where we could extract cash when necessary. So I believe there's some documents about how it was presented to people who contributed. There's not actually an ongoing accounting. I can tell you what it is. In fact, it's at the bottom of this list here, but there's no actual thing that we send out or anything. Could be.
There's also a link on our website, which I just shared with everyone, that talks about the future fund.
Okay, but essentially it's a glorified reserve fund.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
As the person who created it, in concept anyway, and it was never intended to be a permanent situation. It was intended to, unless people specifically wanted it to, their monies to be endowed, it was just, if you will, a slush fund. And it was intended to be at Mitch's discretion, because we didn't know who Mitch was going to be at the time. And we had no idea how complicated the transition was going to be. We were losing all of the early people who had been involved, except Bob.
Not yet.
And we knew that would come soon. And Ellen and I felt pretty strongly that we needed to support the new regime. And that is all the purpose there was in it, unless someone had a specific request to it. And I think there may have been one or two people who put their money into our regular endowment.
Yes,
we do keep that. We do keep these funds in a separate account in the university's books, so we can see what's going on there. And
okay, yeah. So again, it's like a it's like a reserve fund where for accounting purposes.
Exactly. The real thing is that we were prescient. We knew there was going to be a pandemic.
Right.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Visionary leadership, Linda.
Okay, Bob.
I kind of wish you had mentioned that during my interview process, however.
Yeah. Okay, Bob, back to you for engineering.
It's all me. Well, everything is great. We're moving frequency at our Lake George facility. I could read you why. Anybody care, or I could just tell you.
Is it the dreadful person in Albany?
Well, no, I wouldn't say dreadful, and no, not the person to whom you're referring. No, this is an entirely different story. That the FCC doesn't let radio stations interfere with each other. They don't allow licenses to be on the same frequency, or if they're nearby each other on a nearby frequency, to exist. So the FM band has been totally clogged up. There's been a freeze on all applications since the late 90s. And we applied for our Lake George translator in 2003. We applied for, I think, 15 translators or 17 and got 15 licenses. It was great. And we applied on 93.5 in Lake George because that was a frequency that wouldn't interfere with anybody else. Now, there are two kinds of radio stations. You hear us talk about this all the time, translators and the other thing. And we don't even have a good name for the other thing, but they're actually called broadcast stations as opposed to translators. So these translators are secondary services. That means that if somehow there was a broadcast station that appeared somehow that would the translator would interfere with, the translator would have to change frequencies or go off the air. Anyway, in 2007, we applied for some broadcast stations. We upgraded Lake Placid, we upgraded Tupper Lake, we got new ones in Cape Vincent and several other places that I can't remember. But we couldn't upgrade Lake George because 93.5 was too close to 93.3 in Lake Placid. Okay, last year, the guy who owns 93.3, as well as two other broadcasters, got together and they shuffled around all their radio stations, including moving 93.3 to 93.5 in Lake George. So because they moved it there, we have to move. So we're moving to 102.1 on the same tower at the same power. So it shouldn't really affect listeners except for the fact that we're going to be in a different place. So we're trying to let people know. And the way it's going to work is in early March, I think March 4th, we're going to move to 102.1. And to do that, we have to get a crew up there onto Prospect Mountain. Somebody has to climb that 100-foot tower and change the antenna because the new antenna we need for the new frequency. Anyway, at that point, we'll be on two places at once. And Ricky Lee, the guy who owns 93.5 now, will play North Country Public Radio on his station for a week. Then he's gonna turn it off and put an announcement on in the midst of silence that says, if you want North Country Public Radio, go to 102.1. And then around April 1st, it's all him on 93.5 and all us at 102.1. And it's going to be great. So if any of you live in Lake George or Glens Falls or Elizabethtown, no, I don't mean Elizabethtown, Queensbury. I always get them confused because Elizabeth was a queen. Let them know we're going to go to 102.1. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, great.
Anything else there, Bob?
No, as Mitch said, we've got $65,000 to go to digital for all our control boards at Ncpr. This has been a great thing because our existing equipment, most of it is from 1987, and it's been great, but it's not going to last forever. So we want to go to this new digital system. I haven't done it yet because I can't really get into the station that much, and I may be waiting for the new engineer to show up so we could do it together. I'm not sure how that's going to work, but that's what we're working on.
Okay. Let's see. Next thing is the Executive Council committee work. The first thing I wanted to mention to the committee chairs is just a reminder to include Mitch, Paul, and myself on all your committee emails and reports, and as well as Zoom links and whatnot. Not that all of us will be on every one of your committee Zoom calls or anything, but I'll try to attend when I have time. And the three of us just like to make sure we stay in the loop so we know what's going on. So if you could remember to do that, we would appreciate it. I know we have two committees on the agenda here. The University Relations Committee and the Community Outreach Committee are not not on this agenda because I don't believe they have really met yet, and which is fine. Remember, we're just getting this thing up and running, so no pressure. But hopefully every committee will meet before the next council meeting later in the spring. And yes.
Hey, can I jump in real quick? I know on the agenda we have just a brief update from the Governance Committee, followed by the Advancement Committee. Jessica Lawrence, who's going to do her presentation as part of the Advancement Committee, is a little time limited. So I wonder if we can jump to her first, and I chatted with or emailed with Marion Roach Smith, who heads the governance committee, and she was just going to provide a real brief update. But Marion, if you're okay doing that after Jess goes, that would be great.
Okay, so we'll jump to Jessica then, who is the station liaison, one of the station liaisons for the advancement committee.
And I guess what? I'm actually the only person who's in Ncpr right now. So this is crazy. Mitch, I did a few slides, so Mitch can go ahead and show that, but we've had a very productive meeting, Mitch and Lizette and I, and I'm sure you guys can talk about that when I'm gone. And I think it's going to be great. Margot sent me a really nice email that was very lengthy, and I hope I answered some of her questions about underwriting. So here we go. All right, so one of the big things that's come up recently, especially since the pandemic has started, is that people usually think that underwriting is something that they cannot do because they cannot afford it. And it's been brought to my attention that people in the past have only sold annual packages. So it's a lot of education on my end, and I'm looking to the executive council to help me sort of educate the general public that that's not the case. So there are options for every single business. It does not matter. We have on air, you've got your prime shows versus your standard shows. So obviously the 8 o'clock hour is the most sought after show. And then the music shows actually are also very sought after. Those ones are a little bit more expensive versus, the standard shows like The Takeaway, like The World, whatever we have now that replaces the second feature, the second on air, the second on Terry Gross, Fresh Air. So it's different times of the day, but we know that people really want the locally hosted shows. That being said, you can do a full year option of 52 weeks. I did have someone recently who wanted to do 26 weeks, but be on twice a week. And that's totally fine too. And he actually spread it out. So he pays 4 different times a year, but he's only on for half of the time. Then there's seasonal. There's no limit. People can choose to do once a month. Mitch has some people on First Person. I have some people on Bookmarks that only want to air during our shows. There are people who say, hey, I have $100 and I want my fly fishing expedition to be featured 4 times during the Beat Authority. And that's so easy. That can get done as long as I have like 5 minutes notice. So that's not a problem. So Bill and I have met a lot, and digital is obviously something that's really strongly pushing us to the future. We've got a lot of options: podcasts, web tiles, the daily email, First Person Weekly. We now have a banner on the news page, and we still have the smart speaker live stream option. All of these are very user friendly. I mean, if I can do it, anybody can do it, which is saying a lot. They're really easy to schedule. We've had a lot of back and forth at the station as far as what's the best way to do it. I think we've got something figured out now that's really helpful for all of us. And they're all really customizable. Also worth noting, with digital options, the FCC does not have control of those. And so while we like to keep everything sort of even keeled and all the same station wise, we are a little bit more flexible when it comes to digital options. And here's just some examples of web tiles, because we're not just on the radio. So one of the new ones is the Excelis Blue Cross Blue Shield. They signed on for a year. They're on a web tile, and they sponsor Mondays on the daily email. Then the Wild Center Wild Lights, because I reached out to their PR and they sent me a new picture, which has been going great on our website. And one that's been surprisingly good is the Harvest Kitchen at Cornell Cooperative Extension. They do different live online classes. And so they've been sending me a new one every single time that they have it. I put it on the website and it performs beautifully. It gets a lot of clicks, a lot of views, and they're very happy with that. So that's my presentation. Again, I really hope everyone can sort of go out and spread the word that underwriting isn't just for people who have $10,000 a year. There are a lot of people who have $100 and that's all they can afford. And we're going to treat them the same way that we treat those $10,000 givers.
Jessica, thank you. And I just wanted to say, put in a plug for how easy it is. I'm involved with the Tug Hill Tomorrow Land Trust, and we started talking to you last year about underwriting, and it's so easy to work with the station on this, changing our messaging for different things. It's just been fantastic, and we were so happy that when our current 1 year sort of runs out, I'm sure we'll be renewing it. It's just a great way to get the word out, and it is really, really flexible, which is, I think, a real selling point for just about anybody who wants to, do that. So.
Absolutely.
And Jess, let me jump in and just ask you one brief question. What's the best way for people to make this connection? Do you want an email introduction, or would it help just to get names and phone numbers or email addresses, or if someone had an idea for a likely prospect for underwriting, what's the best means of making that happen with you?
Sure. So I would recommend emailing me. I know some people on the executive committee have already done that, and that's been very helpful for me. If you have an idea, or you want to know, would you guys be interested in doing something with them, please reach out to me. Email is obviously the best, because I'm really not always in the office or ever in the office. And I'm excited. I like talking to everyone. I talk a lot. I don't know if you listen to North Country Bookmarks, but I talk a lot. So yeah, I like talking, and help me out and hook me up, and we can make things better for Ncpr together.
Jessica, Mike Erickson here. I've got a real basic question.
Sure.
That I probably should know the answer to, but how is underwriting different from normal giving?
So underwriting is a business donation, and so you're giving us support financially, and in return, we're able to say your name or thank you on the air or on the website. So it's not advertising, because NPR does not call it advertising. They've changed it to underwriting. So that's the main difference. Some businesses do choose to just send a check to membership, and that's totally fine. I think Lizette and I both don't care where the money goes as long as the money comes in. So there are some businesses who are happy to support in membership, and then there are others who they're not interested in having their name put out there, during the Radio Bob show or on the website. They just want to give us money. That's fine. And then there are others who say, when it's fundraiser, hey, here's $100. I run a fly fishing company, and I want my show aired on the Beat Authority 4 Fridays in a row. Totally easy. We can do that. Not a big deal.
Jessica,
Okay.
can you very quickly mention what the requirements are? Because you can say things about the businesses on the air, but you
Sure.
can't say some things.
Yeah, so it's a little tricky, and a lot of places do need some good education. Bonnie and I are in the middle of that right now, actually. You can't use superlatives, so you can't say, St. Lawrence University, the best university in Canton, New York. That's not allowed, because that's basically, we don't have a way of tracking that. Even if you think you're the best, that doesn't mean you're the best. Now, if there's a proven fact, like someone is a Grammy Award winning artist, we can say that, because that's something you can actually find. If you're trying to say you're veteran owned, that's a proven fact. We can do that. If you're trying to entice people to buying your product over the others, that's not going to fly. What we're trying to do is limit it on the air to 15 seconds or less. I always encourage people to say the business name, where they're located, a brief explanation, and where people can find out more information, because that's really all that matters, right? Is you want to make sure you're getting your name out there. And if I want to go to 1844 House, I want to hear how I can learn more. And so that's, we can do that in 15 seconds or less. The web tiles, obviously, we have a little bit more room to play with.
Now, you mentioned earlier FTC regulations on digital format are somewhat relaxed or not applicable. Does that come into play in this situation?
Yes, it does. So we're a little bit more generous when it comes to the smart speaker live stream. We've sort of done a few things a little bit differently there. a lot of it has to do with sort of making sure that we're keeping it internally at Ncpr sounding the same. We don't want it to sound too commercial because, that's just not us.
Right.
So we're generally a little bit more, Mitch, how would I say it? Like, I don't want to say relaxed. I want to say lenient, maybe. Is that the right word I want to use?
Yeah, I mean, we're a little bit more flexible.
Yeah.
I think is the long and the short here. We still want it to meet ethical standards, but some of the things like comparative language can be used on a web tile or a smart speaker pre-roll or what have you, whereas they're firmly not permitted by the FCC in on air. So yeah, those are the two big areas: comparative language and enticement. So we can't advertise a sale or any of those things.
Thank you.
I'd just like to comment. This morning, I didn't have enough time to really carefully look through the materials you sent, but there was an underwriting piece from Jessica, which I thought had some problems, to be perfectly honest with you. I thought it was, and this is what you said here is much, much better, because I found the stuff that was sent to be really elitist.
Right. And so that's actually an old one. And I've been working with the interns on a new one. We had interns.
Throw it away.
Yeah. So that's definitely been on my radar. As Mitch knows, if you saw the one before the one that you saw, you would also be appalled. So it's sort of trying to get it down to what I want it to be is a challenge. But we're getting there. We're getting closer every time. But I totally agree, Linda.
The new one's going to be lovely. It's actually looking great.
Yeah, it has more local pictures of businesses that I've drove around and taken pictures of during the pandemic with my daughter, and then just some more like basic information, like who listens and why you should get your message out. I mean, it's sort of a no-brainer.
And just to add, the interns are design interns, so they're helping us with the layout and customizing it so it looks nice. The station's still responsible for the content.
Right. Absolutely.
Well, and I want to say also, this is somewhat elitist, especially as a real public piece. But obviously, when you're one-on-one pitching why, these are important facts for certain potential underwriters, because they are trying to reach some of that audience. So
exactly.
Yeah.
And so there have been a couple that I've gotten since COVID started. One in particular, a financial management firm, and he liked the media kit, but when I talked to him personally, he liked it a lot more because he understood that I was sort of a normal person who just really wants it to be a great partnership. And that's sort of how I approach all of underwriting. I know Bob knows this particularly. Right. I want it to be the best for the client as much as I want it to be the best for us. I would love to just take your money and not care. But the problem is, as Mitch knows, I care way too much. So I want to have the right person on the right spot. If somebody wants to support Radio Bob, I want to make sure that that's like in line with what Radio Bob does on his show. And it's sort of it's like a puzzle. You've got to piece it all together and it works really well.
Good. Anything else for Jessica?
I know she's got she has an interview for Bookmark she's about to run to.
Okay.
Actually, she's local. She's in Albany. It's pretty cool. So I'm excited to talk to her. She wrote the entire book in Lake Placid.
Okay. Okay. Let's continue with the advancement committee then. Do we want to go right to Lizette or Margot? Do you want to introduce?
Sure, absolutely. As Jessica mentioned, we had a lovely first conversation about the fundraising/advancement group. And I'll actually turn it to Margot since you are chair of that group. Did you want to share anything about that conversation we had?
Yeah, well, we had a very lively discussion, and I can't wait to work with Lizette and Jessica. We've got the best team here, and we're going to look to everyone on the board to help us out because this is a group effort. And so I'll turn it back to you, Lizette.
Wonderful. So, you know, in the coming weeks and months, obviously, we're going to be turning to you guys for help with all kinds of stuff, right? And things like engagement, things like recruitment, and how the board can help us with our mission. You know, and certainly part of that mission is prospecting and making sure that new donors are continuously coming in. Along those lines, I'm going to kind of shift into some of the campaigns that are coming up as well, because that'll segue into the thing that Margot will be discussing with us. So I'm going to give you some dates about our upcoming campaigns, starting with the one that we're having as of March 1st. On Monday, March 1st, we go on air with what we call our New Friends campaign. As I've mentioned to this group in the past, every year we have a New Friends campaign. This campaign was created to help offset some of the potential loss of new donors that we can get given our mostly non-interruptive format. It's hard to just target new donors when you have such short breaks. So this campaign is devoted to literally saying, new friends, if you've been with us for a while or haven't given, now's the time. So we are going to be having this campaign. It'll be a 1-week campaign, March 1st. So again, that's a Monday through Sunday, March 7th. And actually, we're really excited about this one. We're kind of changing it up a bit. We're looking at making this a campaign that can be done not only once a year, but maybe even throughout the year at a separate time on air, but also in our digital site or, you know, all of our digital platforms as well. And just so you know, the theme that we're kind of going with for this is I did it for the first time. So certainly that being I gave to North Country Public Radio for the first time. Along those lines, we came up with a potential challenge, which I will turn over to Margot to speak about.
Yeah, well, we haven't done challenges much before, and so we're stepping into this, but I think it's a good moment. And so what we're trying to do is raise amongst the board members a little money to put together a challenge fund so that when people become new friends, they're giving more than they actually are, but they're really aware that there are other people who are deeply supporting the station. And so we're going to try to raise $5,000 this time amongst us to have a challenge for $5,000 with this first new friend. So I think it's a really important juncture to see if challenges help. There are very lots of stations, WNYC, most of the other stations do have challenges. We're going into this very carefully. It's not going to be a dollar for dollar thing or anything like that, but we're hoping that some of you may decide to work with us on this. Hope to get the 5,000. It's a short window we have here. If anyone on the board would be interested in working with us, please let Lisette know by the end of next week, because we have to put this together to present on March 1st. So I'm going to work on it and I'm going to help. And so please join us in helping with this challenge for the first time. Is that clear enough?
Okay.
Please.
And I'll jump in very briefly and say this is a really exciting opportunity to you know, it's almost like a mini future fund, because our new donors are really our future, and we're excited to leverage the longtime support that many you know, that many of you have given us, and be able to use it as an enticement for people to give for the first time. So I'm thrilled that we're able to do this, and hopefully it will resonate with our listeners.
What we also love about this campaign is the potential that it brings moving forward. Because as we consider using challenge dollars to entice new donors to come in, we can apply that throughout the year, not just during this specific one time. And we'll find new creative ways to also speak with our longtime supporters to continue maybe growing this fund or whatever it becomes, to help with this bringing in of new prospects and new donors. So well, again, we're really actually very excited about it. Did anybody have any questions?
Just one question and maybe one thought. If you raise more than $5,000 for the challenge fund for this, are you going to increase your challenge fund that you're advertising, or are you going to set some aside for the future? And maybe one thing you could do is send an email to all the council members explaining, just answering some of those questions, you know, like if somebody wanted to give you a larger amount that might be used over the year for challenge funds or something, just sort of what it is you're looking for and how it might be used might be helpful. And
that would be fantastic. Actually, you know, this is new to us. It's a challenge. As you know, we have not done challenges for many, many, many years. So certainly it's going to be a interesting process. That's why I think developing it as a fund, so that if we don't make about, well, in the last 2 years anyway, our New Friends campaign brings in about $5,000. So certainly, if we were to raise more than that, I would absolutely consider using that for the next ones. Again, anytime we use this campaign throughout the year, if we wanted to just say across the board that any new donor's gift is matched from this point forward, as long as the fund is there to support it. So again, you know, it's very new. We can certainly modify and mold it to meet the needs of the station. So, and of course, the support is just going to be fantastic. I appreciate it.
okay, thanks. Anything else, Margot or Lizette?
Did you have anything, Margot?
No, I'm fine. Thank you
Okay.
very much for considering this.
Great. If there are no other questions for the Advancement Committee, the Governance Committee, Marion, did you have some comments?
Sure. Well, thank you. We met last week and we went over our materials, that being the map and the list of the membership of the EC and the bylaws. And we have a volunteer in Alan McLeod for going over the bylaws and suggesting some updates, because we're going to have to certainly update that so we get a better definition of who we are and currently, and then what we're looking for in membership of the EC. So we looked at our committee goals and objectives, and we decided about our next meetings, and we're going to be prepared with that action plan. So I think we had a good meeting and we're looking forward to more.
Okay, great. As I said earlier, you know, this committee structure is just getting off the ground, but I'm optimistic, and I think this will be a great opportunity for council members to get more involved and help the station. And so we'll continue to hope for good outcomes. Next, Paul, institutional update.
Thanks, Bob. And I think that you all were sent the exciting news in early February that the Board of Trustees at St. Lawrence had named the 19th president, Catherine Morris. You know, we have among us, as part of the Executive Council, Marion Roche-Smith, who chaired the Presidential Search Committee. And I want to publicly thank her for the work that she put in and the work of her committee to bring us such a great person to be the 19th president. Kate Morris has served her entire life in higher education. She has been at Butler University, first as a professor of psychology. She chaired the department, and for the last 8 or 9 years, she has served as the provost there. She has a strong background as well and love for the liberal arts. She grew up in a town that had a liberal arts college. Her father was a faculty member and a provost at that college. And her undergraduate education was at another strong liberal arts college as well. So I know that she is very excited. And we had the opportunity to provide her with some gifts, and included in those gifts were some of the Ncpr swag that we have. So she is excited to learn more about the station, and when she moves to Canton this summer, and begins to learn more about the community and meet more members of the community. I know, when public health and protocols are approved, she would love to get a tour of the station and to meet some of the station leadership. So that is the biggest news from the university for sure. So happy to take any questions there too.
Congratulations, Paul and Marion and Jeff and everyone else involved who's part of the university and everyone else involved in the search. It's exciting news, and yeah, I'm truly looking forward to getting to meet her. She sounds like a rock star. So
yeah. Yep.
Okay, great. Before we get to public comments, I just wanted to interject here. I think we've all seen the correspondence from Alan McAvoy, who is leaving the great city of Kingston, if I've got it right, for the I won't say even greater, but the really great city and province of Nova Scotia, Halifax, Nova Scotia. And he is interested and excited to stay involved with the station, and we are pleased about that. And I looked at the bylaws. There's absolutely no reason why you have to be living locally, and of course he does have tremendous local knowledge from his years in the local area. So we're looking forward to him staying on the executive council as long as he's interested, and we're looking forward to that. Alan, did you want to just make a comment quickly on anything?
Yeah, just that I raised this with the governance committee and they seem to be supportive of it. I wanted to be transparent. My wife has taken a job with one of the health foundations there. It's an opportunity to return to Nova Scotia, where we're from. And I just love NCPR. I have listened to it since I started coming to Kingston. And with the radio background, I did a journalism degree. I just love good radio, and I find that with NCPR. So I'm happy to support, but also as we work through the governance aspects, we also recognize there's some diversity issues that we're going to address and address. So if sometime in the future it's determined that I should step away, I'm happy to do so. But for the time being, I'm more than pleased that I can continue, because I do love this station and listen to it all the time.
Great. Well, we're really excited that you're interested in staying involved. So thank you.
And Bob, as I mentioned, I think in the governance committee, our digital audience is this really rapidly growing and emerging in importance. So I think it's actually, not just appropriate, but really relevant for us to have members of this committee who primarily access us through digital means, which unless you have a really, really, really good radio when you're in Halifax, I think you'll be limited to. So, so I think it's great that you want to continue. I know we have Andy on this board who is listening to us from points somewhat warmer than the North Country as well.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Okay. Now, next item on the agenda is public comments. And Mitch, I see there are two folks here. Are we expecting comments from both, or I'll turn it over to you now.
Do we have? I know we have one person who's here observing the meeting, and then we have one email that's come in, and let me share that email with you momentarily here.
Oh, okay, good. Yep.
All right, manipulating my screen here. And yes, I will also note that Mark Dwanzik is joining us from Silicon Valley, where the reception is good, and I'm guessing the temperatures are warmer also. So this is a comment from Lewis Kurth, and I will send it on to Ann Adams to include in the minutes for today's meeting. He writes, it's a fairly brief letter. North Country Public Radio enriches the lives of North Country residents and visitors alike with local, state, and national programs which are informative and entertaining. The station staff and management deserve the support and appreciation of all listeners for the very professional job they do for us on a daily basis. My comments are directed to how NCPR might also do even more for the people you serve, to wit, NCPR regional coverage could provide listeners with a locally focused forum where North Country people could respectfully share ideas and solve problems together. NCPR could be a force for good to help us rediscover the ties that bind us together as neighbors and members of a unique regional community. The need for such a venue has never been greater now in this time of pandemic isolation and confusion over the disturbing events of January 6th at our nation's capital. I am convinced that NCPR has the skill and the resources to succeed in such a venture. My question is, will you do it? So that's the one comment that was submitted in advance, and I would submit that this is an issue that that will come up both in talking about outreach in our strategic planning and also in questions of diversity, equity, and inclusion in strategic planning and our committee work as well. So that's what I've had to say about that. We have one person in attendance. Nancy, did you want to address the EC?
Yeah, I would like to. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. I come to the radio station from a long legacy. I live in Racket Lake, but my brother is a St. Lawrence graduate, and my sister-in-law worked at the radio station somewhere in the early 70s, probably before it was nationally affiliated. I get to listen to national NCPR around the country, and actually when I'm in the Netherlands, I listen faithfully at the 8 o'clock hour. We have a 6-hour time zone difference, so it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon when I'm finishing lunch. But my background is as a criminologist, and I'm concerned a little bit. I would like to ask Radio Bob a technical question. Do you have an idea of the penetration of the radio station in the correctional facilities inside the region? They're filled with lots of metal, and it's my understanding that it's awful hard to hear sometimes. Do you have any reading on that? Number one. And number two, as you may know, Adirondack North Country Association has I think it's a $250,000 grant through the DEC to have the Adirondack Diversity Initiative. I wonder if you've been in contact with them, if they've reached out to you, if you've looked at them, because it seems it might fit in with your last pillar. And I'm wondering to see if there's going to be any movement on that along those lines. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your questions.
Bob, Nancy,
any
I'll
thoughts?
hit that. So no, I don't know. I know that we do get occasionally, or when there were letters, we would get an occasional letter from a person within incarcerated person. But you're right. Of course, reception in those places is very difficult. And how would we go about serving that audience better? I don't know. I think that we're talking online here. Do they have access to the internet in jail? I don't know that either. That might be the best thing as opposed to FM radio. That's all I can say. Nancy, anything I can do to, what do you think?
Yeah,
Thank you. I appreciate it. They don't have access to the internet, or if they do, it's in a very restricted and limited. But I know that, for instance, David Summerstein sprinkles his broadcast with a lot of Spanish, and I know that there'll be a lot of Hispanic people who would be very happy to hear some words in their own language. I don't know if he does it purposefully to reach out to that particular population, but I think it goes a long way if it does pierce through the metal. Yeah, thank you.
It's a really interesting question, and feel free to follow up with me. And I would love to explore that possibility further for exactly the reason that you mentioned. As far as diversity goes, I don't know, Lizette. You actually sent me a very long email in just the last 24 hours about our DEI efforts, and I don't know whether you want to. Certainly, being in touch with the Adirondack Diversity Initiative is something that we would be interested in doing in the weeks and months to come.
Absolutely. We are looking at DEI, of course, on many levels here at the station. We have put together one of those pillars, obviously, is our DEI pillar. I've been engaged in conversations, not just through St. Lawrence University, but also through public media resources, and also through the BIPOC communities, which are the Black, Indigenous, people of color communities. So gathered a lot of data, a lot of information, some wonderful resources, and I'm also spoken with several other public radio stations to see how their initiatives are going. And I think in combination with all of that, we will have a really strong, solid goal plan and, action plan for NCPR. And of course, working with St. Lawrence University to make sure it also meets with their requirements and their new strategic plan that was just released. So we're excited about this. I think as a station, we've done pretty darn well with diversity, but there's always room for improvement. And certainly as we look to our audience and bringing in new diverse audience, we need to make sure that we are speaking in the right way to our entire listening audience. So anyway, a lot of work to be done, but very excited about the work as well.
And Lizette, we should mention that you also serve on the University Communications Department Committee on Diversity as well.
Yes, that will tie into, not only how we can do our best work at North Country Public Radio, but how we can tie into our relationship with St. Lawrence University as well, and make sure that all the actions, steps that we need to take on both fronts are being met.
Mitch, can I suggest here that maybe, for instance, that letter that you wrote, that email you that you read, public comment, that and the issue, for instance, of our signal reaching inside correctional facilities, wouldn't that be good topics for the community outreach committee to discuss? So I think this is a situation where this committee structure will help us, because we'll get that committee working on these issues, talking about it, and they can report back to the full council on what they've learned or what they want to suggest. And this would also go towards the outreach would also, again, be part of what that committee should be looking into. So we'll ask that committee to work on that and get back to us. Anything else on this right now?
Just briefly, Bryna has raised a question about whether we have any outreach to the indigenous communities in the area. And I know before the pandemic hit, that was one area that we were working on a partnership between the news department and one of the, there's a media organization in the Akwesasne community. And I think that planning process is still going on. It's obviously been impacted by our ability to travel easily, but that is a significant area of interest for us. So it's also something that I think would be well suited to talking about in terms of outreach. Alan McAvoy also pointed out something that I wanted to mention, that he mentioned. It's been a minute with Sam Sanders, which highlights a lot of voices of color on the air. We have gone to some length in the last year to try to look at our programming to make sure that we're adding programs and making sure our schedule is such that there are programs that speak to not just a variety of different kinds of listeners, but also listeners who really want a diverse set of viewpoints and a diverse, people on the radio with a diverse set of backgrounds. So programming is definitely a way that we can be addressing this. And, of course, we also have our North Country at Work project, which reaches into a diverse group of communities, telling stories of people who aren't just listeners to public radio, but are just, members of the community as well.
Good.
Or the community at large.
Excellent. And by the way, as far as the Akwesasne community, we certainly have good transmitters all around that area. So, and there certainly should be opportunities to do more there. Okay, any new business? And by that, I want to include, does anybody on the council have anything they would like to bring up or anything they would like to mention?
Now that we have a full group in front of us, I just wanted to be sure to mention the entire executive council and staff of North Country Public Radio. Want to congratulate Julia on the birth of her son, who hopefully has napped all the way through this meeting. Oh, and there he is.
Oh.
Don't drop him.
He's very crying, so that's
Oh.
why I'm on mute. But I'm here. Thank you very much.
Did anybody else, does anyone want to bring up anything on new business? Anyone want to comment so far on their experience with the new committees? Anything positive or negative to say? Okay. When I used to work for Social Security, I would, if people weren't, I'd have a question and answer. If no one had any questions were coming forward, I said, well, does anyone have any complaints? And that would usually get conversation going. But hopefully nobody has any complaints. I think everyone's doing great work here. Let's see. Oh, one of the things here, before we approve the minutes, I did notice that Callie Brooks was not on today. Is that correct?
She was unable to make. Yeah, I think I must have mentioned that before you got on the call.
Oh.
Because of the time change, she was not able to make today's meeting.
Okay, great. But so she contacted us. She's been excused, and we're all set. Excellent. Mitch sent out the minutes from the last executive council meeting. So I believe we would want to approve those minutes. Does anyone have any corrections or comments on them?
Nope. So moved to move them.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Hannah. All in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
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 Any objections or abstentions? Okay, so the minutes are approved. Let's see. So I don't think, Mitch, did you have anything else that you wanted to cover?
No, I am off to my first COVID vaccine in 45 minutes. So.
Oh, okay, good. My wife just left to go down to Rome to get her second one, and so good. Okay, well.
I had one other thing, actually.
Yeah.
I wanted, because we're not going to meet again before this happens, the spring fundraiser dates, I wanted to share that with the group as well.
Mhm.
Our spring fundraiser this year, as you know, we had to postpone it last year till May. We typically do our spring fundraiser to bridge March and April, but given the delay last year, we are now doing our spring fundraiser starting Monday, April 19th through Friday, April 30th. So I just wanted to have you guys be aware of that. All right.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I think we're pretty much all set. I want to thank all the members for signing up for committees, and they're up and running pretty much now, and I think that's hopeful. I want to also thank Julia for her help in initially getting that whole ball rolling with the emails and whatnot that went out around Christmas time and early in January. I know she was pretty busy, and I just want to thank all of you again for your time and your effort and support for North Country Public Radio and for being on the council. So thank you so much. And if we could have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, Margot, thanks. Second.
Alan
Okay,
McLeod.
Alan. Okay, thanks. All in favor of adjourning.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you, everybody. Yes.
Stay
Thanks,
safe.
everybody.